We are starting a new book tonight, and for a variety of reasons, we're going to undertake a review of what's probably the longest book of the Bible, by some reckoning, a book that is most misunderstood, a book that is written by a person who many scholars consider the most spiritual person in the Old Testament. That's quite a statement. I won't try to defend it. It's just the opinion of some scholars, but it just to, give you some perspective. Book of Jeremiah, Jeremiah the prophet. His name, by the way, and of course, as you are painfully aware, the first evening tends to be just a lot of yak. We'll get into it, but there's so much background that it's probably good to cover, to give you some perspective. And you'll understand some of our problems as we get in. In fact, that's what I'm going to try to do tonight, is give you some overview, some perspective, what we're going to try to get into, and some of the dimensions of our exploration in the next number of weeks. Jeremiah's name happens to mean the Lord hurls, throws. It can mean, and is more often quoted as meaning exalts, throws up, holds high. Okay? Jeremiah, the Lord exalts or hurls. It happens that the book of Jeremiah, yes, it's a book of prophecy. He is one of the most revered prophets. But it also happens to be one of the most autobiographical books in the Bible. And therefore, we know a great deal about this man. Unlike some of these prophets that we read and enjoy and benefit from, but don't know a lot about, Jeremiah, we're going to reach right into his very soul. We're going to understand the man, his feelings, his passions, his intensity, his concern. We're going to, and fortunately, he also happens to be a model for us to follow, in the sense that he's deeply spiritual and uncompromising with himself and with his nation Israel. More specifically, the tribe of Judah, the house of Judah. But if I use the term Israel, I'm using it in the generic sense. I may slip, so I might say that up front early, that technically this is obviously, after David, of course, and Solomon, after Solomon came the Civil War. And the Civil War divided the nation Israel into two houses, Israel to the north, Judah to the south. And the subsequent kings, particularly in the north, went from bad to worse. The northern kingdom, denotatively called Israel, just fell into ruin. Idolatry, each king worse than the previous, and just bad news. Ahab, Jezebel, all of that. And then, but finally, the Assyrians took them captive, and they were made slaves. Judah to the south survived longer. And it's Judah that we're going to be focusing on. If I use the name Israel, it's a slip of the tongue in a sense, because I should be very careful and try to remember to say Judah, because we're speaking of the house of Judah, that is the southern kingdom, the southern half of the nation, recognizing the northern half is already fallen, already gone. But for some substantial period of time, Judah is in better shape, relatively. There are some reforms, and then things deteriorate. Ultimately, the Babylonians do two things. They conquer the Assyrians, so they're on top. They're the world power at the time. And but ultimately, Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, is used by God to take Judah captive. And Jeremiah is in the strange position of admonishing his country to surrender, to yield to this Gentile ruler, because Jeremiah says that this is the instrument of God for judgment of the nation. This was not a popular theme. Okay? He was treated as a treasonous person. It's actually more complicated than that, and I'll unravel that as we go, but just to give you sort of a superficial overview. And of course, it's in Jeremiah's time that Judah falls and the Babylonian captivity begins.